Okay, hello and welcome to another expert interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP online sales magazine and Pipeliner CRM. And today I am joined by Bob Urichuck, who is going to talk to us about the great subject of sales training, subject dear to my heart, dear to Bob's heart. Morning, Bob.
Oh, thanks, John. It's great to be here today.
Yeah. So let me just give you a little bit of background about Bob. He's a catalyst for constant improvement, a cultivator of human potential, an international speaker, trainer, best-selling author. His book, Velocity Selling, How to Attract, Engage, and Empower Buyers to Buy and Motivate Your Teams in 30 Days are a fantastic book. Internationally recognized sales guru, travels across the world, speaks everywhere, trains lots of people. That about sum it up, Bob? You're pretty much a very busy guy.
Well, I've the funny thing is, John, is I had this desire when I was 22, but I didn't take action until I was 45. And the last 20 years have been the most incredible experience living my passion. I just love sales and I love training, obviously, and helping other people grow and develop themselves.
So let's dive into the subject of sales training, because as we were talking beforehand, I was involved in that area for quite a long time when I was running Huthwaite that did spin selling. And I was saying to you, Bob, if you line up 100 CEOs in a room and say, how important, who here thinks training is important? 100 hands will go up. And then if you say, okay, how many of you have put aside budget for training this year? Like maybe 2 hands that'll go up. And then if you go further and you say, how many of you put aside, of you two who put your hand up, how much of that is for sales training? And you might be lucky if you get half an arm. Why is that?
Well, it's funny, I think a lot of organizations, when they look at sales training, they think that hiring someone who's had sales experience is the answer. Mm-hmm. But yet these people haven't been trained on maybe they've been trained on traditional techniques, but they're not staying current. They're not really trained. Maybe they got good charisma, whatever it is. But training is absolutely important. It's the foundation. And I think that if anything, they're looking for a quick fix only when they're in trouble. Right. Because the biggest problem I find in sales training is everyone's looking for a 1-day, 2-day, 3-day fix. Mm-hmm. And then it's done. Yeah. But that's the biggest mistake anybody can make, because whatever you learn in 1, 2, 3 days is lost within 30 days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you just said about the fact that it's they like these quick fixes. It's only when there's a crisis comes up do people think, oh, bring in sales trainers. And the other part that you touched on there, which I think is really important too, is they think that a sales manager, hire a sales manager or a salesperson should be able to train. But one of the things that we discovered, back when I was at Huthwaite, was that most really good salespeople, right, are unconsciously competent, right? So they have no idea what makes them good. And so when you try and use copy what Joe over there does because he's the best, and Joe's like, oh, I don't know what I do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So when you engage with an organization, how do you sell them the idea of how important sales training is, and how it's a long-term investment as opposed to just a short hit?
Yeah, well, a lot of times I've kind of been fortunate. I've traveled and spoken and trained in over 50 countries. Mm-hmm. So I got to know a lot of cultures and everything else. And one of the first things I find about any form of training, not just sales training, is that people have to take ownership of it. Mm-hmm. So I don't try to sell them on sales training. I try to understand where they're coming from, what they need. And of course, I'm a big believer. I left the corporate world, 20 years ago now. And, a 6-digit job, 6 weeks vacation to live my dream. I took the biggest risk of my life. The primary reason, because I didn't believe in 1-day, 2-day training that the organization was giving. So I wanted to get into what I call continuous, ongoing learning. And that's why we developed Velocity Selling as it is. It's little modules. You learn little bit. You do some workbook exercises, you apply it in the real world, you come back, you get coached on it, you move a step forward. So only through time can we change attitudes and behaviors. But it's understanding always what is their biggest sales challenge and determining whether you could solve it or not. Now, I've been very fortunate in that way because I engage buyers right at the front end. They approach me. I involve them. And what I find one time, I'll never forget this one, it's a story in Dubai where I was giving a talk to Marriott Hotels, and my agent comes up to me, says, Bob, I got a CEO outside. Can you spare 5 minutes? I said, well, I'm on stage in 15. He says, this will only take 5 minutes. I go out and I meet the guy. And it was so funny because he was the CEO. And he says to me, Bob, we've got a problem. Our sales reps are not hitting target. And I said, okay, so what's your target? And he goes, 5.7 billion. I said, is that B or M? He says, B, billion. I said, okay, is that local currency, AED, or is it US dollars? He says US dollars. I go, wow, that's a great target. Where are you now? He says, we're only at 2.2. I said, you're not even at 50%. It's the end of September. What is your year-end target? When's your year-end? He says, December this year. And I said, okay, so what did you expect me to do? He says, well, we heard a lot of good things about you. We thought maybe a day or two of training would turn them around and get them on target. So I laughed and I said, well, look, why don't you just give me $25,000 now and we'll call it quits?
Yeah.
What do you mean? I said, look, I don't want to waste your time or your money. But if you want 2 days, you're wasting your time. You're wasting my time and you're wasting your money. Well, how would you do it? And then I had to rush. So I just said, look, talk to him, work out the details. I'll cancel my flight tomorrow. I'll stay. I'll do 2 days. But here's what I want you to do. After 2 weeks, I want you to follow up with these people because they may not like my message. They may not like me. So let's just call it quits. But if you're interested and you want to continue, ask me for a proposal. One of the things I teach people too is never give someone a proposal. Because if I give you a proposal, John, whose is it? It's mine, right?
Yeah, it's yours, of course.
But if I give you a draft proposal and allow you to massage it a little, you just took ownership of the sales training.
Right.
I've engaged you. How can you say no to your own, your own decision sort of thing? So I ended up giving them a proposal. Finally, in November, went over there, spent 2 weeks with them. First week, learned a lot. Second week, I said, I changed the way they did business. They were in the real estate business. They were selling floors at a time. That was a big sale.
Right.
So well, if you're going to try to hit 5.7 billion, you got to think bigger than that. He said, well, how can we think bigger? I said, well, how many buildings have you got that you can unload right now? He says 5. I said, okay, give me your 5 buildings, give me your price tag, and give me your 5 best sales reps, each of a different nationality. And he says, why? I said, because I want to sell buildings, not floors.
Right.
He says, we can't do that. I said, why not? We've never done it before. Well, let's try it. Well, that group of 5, we ended up sitting together, planning it, going through the ABCs of targeting, getting the best clients from the past, matching nationalities, all the rest of it. Guess what? By December 23rd, they surpassed target. Didn't do it. They did it. All I did is the tools, the ideas, and the thing. But if I didn't engage them right at the upfront, they would have never done a thing. And that's one of the key things.
Yeah, and I guess the other key constituency, right, is if you really want things to take root and be embedded, it's what we touched on earlier, is the sales manager, right? Because the sales manager has to reinforce, because salespeople take their lead from the sales manager. So if you come in, do training, and the sales manager never refers to it again, guess what the salesperson thinks wasn't important?
Well, most of the times when I get involved in organizations just like this one, it was actually the CEO and the VP of Human Resources that hired me. And I said, don't you have someone responsible for sales? Oh, yeah, we have a CSO, a Chief Sales Officer. Don't worry about him. It became a worry, I'm afraid. Because here's the thing. Whenever I engage with a client, I always ask for 2 things. One, do you have someone in-house that does training or coaching that I could help to reinforce and save you some money? Because if you have an in-house resource, it's really going to help. Number 1. Number 2, of course, are sales managers involved, because they have to be involved. They have to walk the talk. They've got the biggest challenge because they have to demonstrate the appropriate behaviors that they want the salespeople to follow. So I want them in the training as well. And then I want to do separate sessions with them on how to coach their people for ultimate success. Because face it, monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's face it, I mean, the sales manager is a difficult job as it is, and the first thing they're going to ditch is what they see as the least important. They'll say, well, the coaching, I can do the coaching next week. Let's focus on firefighting right now. And of course, the more you relegate coaching, the more people say, well, he's not really serious about it anyway.
Yeah. And let's understand, sales managers, you get promoted sometimes from sales, you go into sales management, and you get into a head shift. Now what you're doing is You're kissing butt upwards to protect your career,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to recognizing those people who put you in that position or are supporting you. And it's the 80-20 rule. They're spending 80% of their time with the fires and running
Mm-hmm.
upward, when they should be spending 80% of their time with the salespeople, and from windshield coaching, going on joint sales calls, or just reinforcing messages and guiding them through the process.
No, absolutely. So how about some practical advice, right? So if I'm in an organization, maybe I'm a VP of sales or something like that, and I really want to get my people good sales training. How would you advise me to sell that concept, maybe to the CFO or the CEO, about how would I sell the idea of sales training?
Well, again, the sales training I teach is not about selling. It's about the opposite of selling. It's how do you engage buyers to buy.
And I'm
So I don't
talking about how would you get your C level internally to buy off on the concept of sales training?
exactly.
Okay.
I guess I would first find out what have they done in the past, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what would you like to do differently.
Hmm.
And of course, I would like to get them engaged in a conversation on continuous learning
Right.
and using a sales system versus techniques.
Hmm.
Now, for example, a sales system, we cover all components in velocity selling. We often say you have to have a strong foundation before I could even teach you to sell. That foundation is your attitude. Your
Right.
attitude towards yourself, your attitude towards your organization, and your attitude towards the buyer. So we get their belief systems up. Then we look at behavior. Why do you go to work? What are your personal goals? Because corporate teaches us about corporate goals and objectives, but they never teach us about personal goals.
Hmm.
How can I reach your corporate objectives, John, if I don't have a personal goal to keep me motivated?
Hmm.
Get them to the foundation. Why do you go to work? What's in it for you? Work is nothing but a stepping stone to helping you get where you want to go. The problem with society is most people don't know where they want to go in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
Hmm.
I was fortunate. At 22, I planned out my life to age 50. I surpassed all my goals, and I'm content today. But that's a key thing. And then, of course, we also have to look at organizational goals and how they can meet them, and take it over a year, not just over a month or a quarter, but take a look at the whole year. So what we do is we engage people into creating not just the goals, but turning their goals into a sales plan with obstacles and contingency plans, so that they own the sales plan, they sign off on it. Then that makes the sales job the job easier for sales managers. All they have to do is monitor behaviors. The biggest problem with sales management, what are they always monitoring? Numbers.
Hmm.
How do you get the numbers? It's through the behaviors, telephone calls, visits, things like this. If you're not engaging your buyers, and if you're not out there doing the right behaviors, you're not going to get any leads or any prospects. But then again, we have to teach them where to target in, where to get what we call the best roadie. People
Hmm.
think money's the most important thing in life. Well, time beats money. Money comes and money goes, but time just goes.
Hmm.
So we always have to look at, how do you get the best return on time invested? How do you position yourself as an expert so people come looking for you by name? You're not always chasing. In other words, we do a pull strategy versus a push strategy.
Hmm.
And sales organizations are caught up in pushing themselves on others, when there's better results when you engage people and pull them in. And then we get into two parts of competencies. We look at basically, you need to be buyer focused.
Hmm.
You need to learn how to engage buyers and how to empower buyers. And then we teach them an 8-step sales system, from building rapport, setting the parameters, uncovering buying motivators, financial ability, decision making. We summarize. At this step, we know whether we've got a sale or not. And if they're not qualified, because that is our job as a salesperson,
Hmm.
is to qualify buyers.
Right.
If they're not qualified, we need to reject them while maintaining a relationship. So what we're doing here is we're teaching salespeople how to take control of the sales situation. Now, from a sales trainer perspective, what's most important is you have to demonstrate everything you're talking about.
Yep.
You are the greatest role model for these people by just demonstrating how these things go. I tell people, never answer another question in your life. After I say that, I get a question in the class,
Hmm.
and I would respond to it with a technique called respect, repeat, refer. Geez, John, that's a really interesting question. Can I ask you why you asked me that?
Hmm.
and you'll find that there's a message behind it. So
Right.
there's a lot of questioning and listening techniques involved. But the key thing is the buyer always feels they're in control, but in reality, the salesperson's in control.
Hmm.
And that's the biggest difference of them all.
So in your time, and you've been doing this for a while, as you say, and you've done it across the globe. What changes, if any, have you seen over the last number of years? Because people are all the time saying, "Oh, the whole buying process has changed, sales has changed." But what and we always have to separate what has really changed from what we perceive as changed from what actually has
Yeah.
stays the same and is still just as relevant today. So, what are some of the real changes you've seen?
Well, some of the changes I've seen in salespeople is they are becoming more buyer focused.
Hmm.
In other words, they're not going in just pitching and talking about themselves. They are taking the time to build a relationship and to ask more questions and everything else. And that's tough for traditional salespeople who are always going out pitching
Right.
to slow down, listen, ask questions, and follow a system.
Hmm.
It's a big challenge. Now, of course, there's been a million technological changes to simplify the life. But let's face it, salespeople haven't changed. No one in sales likes paperwork or administration. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%.
Now, a lot of this technology simplifies it, but it's still there. And as much as it's there, I don't think people are using it as effectively as they can. And that's the other side of it. Other than that, you still have the sales manager, salesperson. You still have hiring people that may have some experience but are not necessarily trained. You have companies that do believe in sales training, but not as many as you would think.
Hmm.
It, it's a new thing, and oh, sales training? We've never done that. Why would we do sales training? Uh, let's face it, it's the most important profession of all professions.
Yep.
It's also the least respected.
Yep.
And my objective is to work with people like you globally to change the perception of our reputation.
Hmm.
Because let's face it, without sales, there's no transactions. Without transactions, no revenue. Without revenue, organizations would not exist and no one would have a job. The
Yeah.
world revolves around sales.
Yeah, no, we agree 100% with that, and we really believe that trade is so important, and salespeople are the front line. But it is a fascinating thing to reflect on. Is that here you have the group in your organization that is the first line of interface with your customers when they're prospects. They have the relationship with your customers, and yet. So you would put completely untrained or uninvested in people as your first line of interaction with the customer, but you wouldn't dream in a million years of somebody walking in off the street and saying, "Oh, I'm pretty good at math." And you go, "Oh, well, maybe you want to be our accountant." I mean, you'd be like, "Where's all your credentials, and are you doing your ongoing, professional development?" I mean, you wouldn't dream of that, right? I mean,
No,
but with sales, and why do you think that still remains today that people don't equate them the same as other jobs?
I think it's the traditional sales perception that people are still hung up in.
Hmm.
And as that perception changes, we see organizations change. Recently, I just got called in to do an hour keynote to a couple of hundred salespeople, and they wanted me to give them a talk on customer centricity because they want to change from being an operations driven organization to a sales driven organization.
Right.
And they learn that customer centricity is a thing these days. Now, customer centricity, I have a problem with that because customer is someone you're already doing business with.
Yeah.
I like to call it buyer focused because
Hmm.
buyers are everywhere, not just customers, they're everywhere.
Hmm.
So we have to look at the global thing and think big in this case. So certainly, I think, more and more people are going that way. And of course, training itself has changed a lot. The biggest reason I went to online sales training is because people were paying me crazy amounts of money to fly to Kuwait or to fly to Pakistan or to Singapore and do a day or two of training plus
Hmm.
business class airfare. It's cost them $25,000 for this for 2-3 days. It's crazy.
Hmm.
Now online for less than $100 a month, they can get all the training they want. It's repetitive. It's continuous. There's everything you can ask for. It's just that has been a significant change I find in the whole sales training industry because it's so much more affordable and accessible for everybody.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is like salespeople are using technology more anyway in the sales process.
Yeah,
There's a lot more. You're doing a lot more sales interactions over Skype, GoToMeeting, whatever you're doing.
yeah.
People are doing product demos, so I think your modern day salesperson needs to be comfortable with technology anyway.
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely.
So what, as we wrap up here, what advice would you have for any organization that is, as you mentioned before with that other customer, maybe they're hitting a crisis point and they think they're going to turn to training to fix it. What advice would you give them before they start that process?
Well, I think it would be important for them to talk to other people who've conducted sales training programs to hear what went well, what didn't go
Mm,
well. Now, sales training is an investment, but it's an investment that pays for itself and brings you more money.
mm-hmm,
I think that's something a lot of people need to say. If you spend $10,000 with me, I can guarantee you over $30,000 in revenue. I'm talking new revenue
sure,
or more from that training. But there's so much that I can do. It's how much can you do and what's under my control and what's under your control.
right.
So when we work with organizations, we try to make sure we give them the option. We could coach your people. We could do quarterly conferences, keynotes. We look at the different options. But what we want to do is really partner with a company, and it's a minimum of 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So in that 1 year, everybody's on the same page, same language, same everything, and we could actually measure the results and see the impact it's had.
So
So
in
first
so in,
question,
Yeah, so in essence, you're saying that the first thing that most companies or people need to look at is how much are you prepared to invest, not financially, which is obviously a part of it, but from a commitment and time perspective.
yeah. And this is where I find that we could do 3 days, and the cost of 3 days far outweighs every one of your salespeople having a subscription to the online training for a year and some coaching. So
Sure.
it's a no-brainer almost. It's more affordable today than ever, and there's so much information out there. But again, it's finding a program that's continuous, not just modules of techniques,
Hmm.
but when I say it's continuous, one module flows into the next, to the next, to the next. And of course, it's repetitive and it's reinforcing, and coaching and sales management support just helps big time. But don't go into it, train our salespeople. Look at the whole sales organization as one.
Hmm.
And that's where you make an impact, because now you're not selling as an individual, you're selling as a team. And team selling makes a big difference.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way to round this out. Yeah, team selling makes a big difference. I agree 100%. Okay, it's been great, Bob. Why don't you just tell the viewers a little bit more about you and how they can contact you?
Well, I have two websites. My personal website for speaking, training, etc. is bob@bobu.com, bob@bobu.com. You can learn more there. And there's a lot of free resources there, from articles, books, blogs, tips, videos, everything. And then the other website we have is velocityselling.com. And that's our online sales training portal. I'm sorry. Very interactive, short videos, interactive workbook exercises, real life application, all that kind of stuff. Testing, monitoring, tracking. You'll always know where your salespeople are and what they're doing in learning. And we've even just now put up a 7-day free trial offer. So anybody could go there and get 7 days of free training in all the different components and see where we don't ask for credit cards, nothing like that. And what I do is I follow up with an email just saying, what's your biggest sales challenge, so I could direct you to the modules that will make you the biggest difference. And my email address is simple. It's just bob@bobu.com or bob@velocityselling.com.
Great, I love it. Okay, listen, thanks, Bob, again. This has been great conversation. Loved it. This is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeline of CRM. We'll talk to you all again soon.
Thanks, John.